Alright, hell yeah. So I posted this video just yesterday, and I want to do a full breakdown on the moves that I do, because going into even just this year and even this session, I'm just trying to high side, just try to maintain and trying to get the boat to lock in onto that wave. So hell yeah. So that's the clip that we're going to be looking at. And the first thing up is going to be this first turn. This is going to be a very traditional turn where I'm going to do a PRY turn. So let's see this. So there's the PRY. And so that's all we're going to look at first, is just this 180. You know what I mean? And I hardly even need to PRY just because I'm on this left side of the pile. I'm on the higher side. I'm going to drive in. This driving and angling that direction really frees up this location of the boat so that doesn't purl. And that whole swinging motion just really brings the boat around. So the boat just goes all the way around that pile. And then I would categorize this as a shoulder turn. We actually moved all the way around the pile, and then so the bow of my boat is into that shoulder water, and that's also going to take the boat downstream just way easier. And so so let's take a look at that all the way through, and that really helps, you know, turn the boat, where I just have to do a very little PRY. All right, hell yeah. And I think it's useful for me just to make a lot of videos before I get to the terminology and stuff. But after this, once I do this PRY, now I'm backwards. Like, I'm literally backwards in my seated position. And this is where using like skateboard terminology, and I'm going to try to adopt skateboard terminology. It's different because you have, even when going backwards, I could sit over here or I could sit over there. Where a skateboard, you don't put your feet on one side or the other of the skateboard. And so in a raft, you'd have to have more terminology. Okay, so let's take a look at what I do, just that. So we're going to do this spin, and then I'm just going to high side to the front of the boat. So right now I jump to the front of the boat and to the other side. So that's the first thing that we do. And then let's take a look at that dynamic. Because when we spin the boat around, all right, so now after we've done a 180, technically the boat is surfable. Like if I stop this momentum, I can surf back in. And so that's why these videos are good, to show like what I could do. And so if I do this PRY right here, if I stayed on this side, it's probably actually the better thing to do, because, and this is from this week's footage of staying over here and then doing an early rotation. So on this wave is perfectly set up for an early rotation. So I'm going to, you know, angle the boat in, and like right here is where I would just turn my body around. If the boat is angled that way or rotating that way, I'm going to rotate opposite. And if I just quickly rotate around, I do have to switch my paddle hands, but that's fine. I can take the paddle all the way around the boat and stick it back in. And then all I have to do is a forward stroke. And right here, if I was sitting facing, you know, the trough, then I would just be in a perfect normal R1 position. It's when backwards I feel like, uh-oh, I need to do something. Well, if I was to sit on this tube facing forward, all I would do is PRY anyway. And so what I'm saying is that even if I'm backwards, just get my paddle in and stop this rotation. And you can see that this rotation is, sorry about that, is rotating the boat this way. So just dive my paddle in and stop that rotation, and then do an effective PRY. Even if you're not very good at prying off the bow, you can stick your paddle in towards the bow and then just kind of like do a couple PRYs. PRY quickly and then take it out, stab it again, and PRY it again. So even 2 quick PRYs, and that would lock me in. And since I am over here on this side of the wave, and if I do lock the boat in, now the boat's going to travel around the wave again. And the cool thing about it is that I've already was over here, and the boat already traveled around this pile. And so it's going to be really easy for the boat to travel around the pile again. And I think that back and forth, using the arc of that pile, is probably the most you know, simple thing to do back and forth, as a way to just kind of stay on a wave. Okay, hell yeah. But I don't do that, and we jump to the other tube. So even when I do this 180, now I just jump to that other tube, and that has some dynamics that I definitely want to talk about. All right, so hell yeah. And the dynamics that we're going to talk about is how that is now an effectively low-sided tube. When I jump over there, that does a low side turn. So I want to coin the term low side turn, because when I jump over onto this tube, a couple things happen. The boat, think of it like an arced surface. The boat wants to necessarily turn this direction. See how like, let's say this is the new bow of the boat. The bow of the boat wants to turn towards the left. And that's going to happen when you're over onto this tube. Now, there's a chance that I could sit on this tube and this part of the boat could catch current and it would, take me that way. But what happens when I sit on that tube, this part of the boat lifts out of the water. So it has less of a tendency to build up onto this side. And when crashing in, it has more of a tendency to build up on the other side. And so even if I'm not sure about what direction the rotation is, because the rotation is actually going the other direction. So this is really cool to even just show that you can stop the rotation by just jumping on that tube. And then what we're going to show is that, for this move, I can jump to that tube, stop the rotation, and then I'm set up for another spin or a side surf, especially stopping the rotation and then throwing the boat back into that pile. That's perfect for catching, and doing a side surf. So that's kind of where we're at right here. And that's going to be the next thing that we look at. So hell yeah. So we chose to do a pile turn, and then I'm just going to jump. This is effectively just jumping forward, but also just jumping to the other side of the boat. And what that does, so two things. Jumping forward helps release this, and then also jumping to the other side helps release this side even more. So the jumping forward releases the bow of the boat, the jumping to the other side releases this side, and it's just really cool. And then we have a third aspect, is that once we do have momentum going this direction, being on that outside tube really low sides this. So you actually have like a driving surface. Now that driving, this low-sided tube, it's weighted, but we're just actually getting sucked and purled or caught as it gets pushed. But even like right here, we're still maintaining that low side, and you can see that kind of driving in. All right, hell yeah. So stopping the rotation, we're going to take a look at that a couple times, just because that's a really effectively useful thing to do, is just jump to the other side and know that it's going to stop that rotation. With spins in general, it's easy to get spin out. I'm going to do this spin, and then I'm just going to spin out to the eddy. And so I want to, stop the rotation. So we talked about how we could throw in a pry right here. We talked about how when I do this turn, instead of like right now, like I got enough momentum to carry myself into a spin, so just rotate my body counterclockwise and just face. I would be facing the trough now, and I could just take a forward paddle stroke and be in my R1 position. That's another way to stop this rotation. But in this clip, I do this pile spin and then just jump effectively to the other side and forward, and then that like lays on the low side tube. So I'm going to call that a low-sided tube and a low-sided turn into the trough. It definitely bites real hard, but it still effectively catches the surf, and it catches the surf in a side surf. Sometimes, if this didn't bite, so much, and I actually jumped even farther forward, and this would actually travel across, because some other terms is that, this is, I need to coin the term for low side ferrying. Like when you're on a wave, when you're just moving laterally from left to right across the wave. I don't know what kayakers call that. It's essentially a ferry. You're using a hole to ferry to one side or the other. And it's always going to be easiest to be on the, well, I don't know if it's going to be easier, but it makes the most sense if you're on the higher tube. So this tube over here is the higher tube, and then I would be able to pry my way that direction. When you're on the low side tube, you're prying to, well, yeah, I apologize. It's hard for me to figure out what direction you're prying and what direction you're paddling forward to hold a position. But effectively, a pry on either side holds the angle when you do rudder effectively. All right, so hell yeah. But when moving from one side to another on that low-sided tube, it actually grips you into the wave probably easier because you're on a low-sided tube. So let's take a look at that. Being on a high-sided tube, especially on a small wave, it's really easy. So if I was on this tube right here and then surfing across, there's a chance that I might just teeter-totter up and out, but this effectively keeps me low-sided. And so that's a good skill to move across a wave on the low-sided position. You know, here I'm just backwards, but you can imagine if you're in your low-sided position, you're going to feel like you're going to tip. You're going to feel like you're going to tip into the water as you're traveling across that wave. All right, so hell yeah. So we do this pry turn, jump to the other side, and do a low-sided turn, and we kind of catch it into a, and we actually don't get pieced out. So that actually catch, I'm going to call this a side surf, and then we're going to take a look at what else happens. Now, you know, for this session, I'm just really effectively trying to jump to the pile, and then also, you know, jumping early. Check this out. The second I actually jump from here to there, the boat shifts down into the wave. And so that's a big property that comes up with boats in general. It's kind of like running in a canoe. Like all the center of mass, let's say it's just like right here through me, the boat doesn't really weigh as much as the person in it. And so if I move my body this way, the rest of the boat is actually gonna like move more, up to twice as much, you know what I mean? So that's kind of cool, and that motion can happen instantaneously, and so that can be like what you can use in R1 in general, but that really lays that in there. So for this session, I'm just always trying to jump to the pile, and I'm just sharing with you right now that even just jumping to the pile gets that boat to lurch backwards. You know, so I'm going to jump to the pile and the boat lurches back into the wave. And hell yeah. So let's talk about that spin right there, because as we're just going in for a spin, maybe I don't know what direction it's going to go. I don't even know if I'm on the low-sided tube or the high-sided tube. But yeah, this is effectively going in on the low-sided tube, and then we do a pretty decent 180. And then almost a 360. So we're going to talk about that 180 from here, and we're going to categorize this as well, I didn't do it, but I'm going to call this a shove it. And let's see if I can remember from the last video. And I think what I classify as a shove it is being on the low-sided tube, because if you are on this low-sided tube, it really builds up. Nah, I don't think I actually categorized the shove it from, I don't know what direction I categorized it, but let's think this through. If I'm sitting on this left tube, that's what we're going to analyze. Let's say I'm just sitting on the left tube. My left foot should be forward, and my right foot should be back. So that would be the skateboarding stance if you were over on this left side. And so I'm just comparing R1 rafting to a skateboard stance. And that's fair, because when your left foot is forward and you're on the left side, you're technically going to be easier to face, across the boat to the other side, just like a skateboard. And then so if the boat is turning this direction, the stern or the back of the boat or the board or the skateboard is turning that way, and I would use my back foot to flick it this direction. And so that is what a shove it is. The easiest portion of a shove it is just flicking your foot back. It's actually harder to flick your foot forward. That's a front side shove it, but this is just a backside shove it. And so hopefully I got that right, that the shove it is from a low-sided position, and you're turning away. You're using that low side energy to really build this up. And typically what you want to do for the shove it, I would imagine, I don't know if it's always the case, is you want to be fairly vertical, be on this low-sided tube, build this up, but then have it at least when the boat like kicks out, you know, to have that be off center. So you are coming in more vertical. Like obviously when the bow of the boat gets kicked, you don't want all this energy build up to go right through you and your center of mass, because you'll just get kicked out. So there is that, but as you're spinning in, I'm spinning in vertical and using that spin momentum. So this is a perfect setup to be on this low-sided tube, to build up that energy. And now we're going to talk about the shove it. The shove it in skateboarding is just maintaining this position the entire way as the board does a 180. Now here, I'm always like looking for the, so from here, I don't maintain this position all the way through, but I could. So let's go to 90. So I'm going to hit and then go to 90. So you're always going to have this high side. To do this high side, I want to sit like square on this part of the boat, on the high-sided part of the boat, like both cheeks parallel. I can still hold on, but definitely just look down the trough. And that actually makes it easier when doing this trick. If I can sense, okay, low-sided tube, vertical, it's going to go that way. This is the shove it. And the boat's really going to rotate hard because of the low-sided tube setup. We've talked about that. And the boat's really going to swing. And so I'm just going to jump to this, going to face the trough, and the boat's continuing to go around, and I should just be facing forward. And then I'm just set up for the next trick, and done. You know what I mean? So let's talk about paddle position for the shove it. Let's say I was over here. I would have... does this make sense? No, like I'm not holding the paddle right for over here anyway, but if I was, and I was on this left side, I would be holding, oh, it's really difficult for me to, the outside hand would be holding the, holy hell, why is this so difficult for me to even visualize? So I'm sitting here in a chair. If I was paddling on the outside, my right hand would be at the T-grip. Yeah, so this hand's got to be at the T-grip. This hand's got to be at the throat. But if this paddle was out here, then we're going to do this rotation. So or just say the paddle's always to the left of me. So like right here, oh, there I switch. So there I switch hands. So now the paddle's in the hand that it should be in. So now I just always keep this paddle to the left of me, but keep my body facing the same direction, not moving my body with the boat. And if I was more square and even counter rotating and facing the trough, I would be able to put in my paddle right there for a forward stroke even right now. And so that would be the shove it. And then I would be able to, you know, like paddle or pry. Paddle, do a forward stroke to bring this turn around, or just throw the paddle in for a pry. All right, hell yeah. And so instead of just doing this high side stuff where I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on, and what happens is I just get backwards. Every time that you're forwards and then you do like a 180, now you're just backwards, which can have benefits. So this is kind of probably where we're gonna, you know, do the last thing for this video, is like, hey, cool, I'm backwards now, you know what I mean? And I'm spinning, but now I'm backwards. Hey, I can stop this momentum by throwing the paddle near the bow and doing a pry, and then prying my way around the pile. And I need to get some water. So the cool thing about doing a backwards and then prying the bow is potentially I'm over there on that far side, and I can just use that pile to turn the boat. And we said that in the beginning, that if I'm going from one side of the pile to the other, then the boat kind of has some time to make that turn, and it's not as dynamic. It's not just vertical and then all of a sudden jumping up into a like the shove it. The shove it would be a vertical entrance, like your bow's off to the side. It instantly like goes up into almost a high-sided, you know, as it's doing the 90 degrees, that sideways kind of gets high-sided. And so you could almost call it a pop shove it. So let's take a look at that. Hell yeah. So this is kind of all the way through the pry. I'm going to set up for, now I'm going to set up for the shove it, and then just keep my body. And then so I guess it didn't, like the sidewaysness right here. Sometimes this can get hella vertical. So if you did do the shove it, and you want, you probably want to maybe hang on with your perimeter line, especially if you're just totally facing the trough, because there's not very good place to like wedge your feet in. All right, hell yeah. And then so now I'm going backwards, but I could stop this rotation. So this is just a lot of rotation. So the shove it, but too much, it's going to be over rotated. And then I could go for a 360. And then, so let's talk about finish this sentence. You know what I mean? Like I could throw my paddle in and stop the bow's rotation. And if I notice that I'm over on that left side, what I've been getting good at is like, well, even if I'm backwards, like, hey, take a backward stroke and do a paddle pry and get this to go this direction. And if this boat goes around the pile this way, then I'm just already, if I do that in a backwards position, that's the same thing about doing that early spin, like going in for a turn but then turning your body early. The only difference is I've turned my body way early and I'm just going in switch. So I could, and that's what I definitely need to get more better at, more better at the early turns. And then obviously just every time that I'm backwards, hey, like could I stop the bow and could I just do a switch? If I'm over here, could I just do a switch turn on this pile? Because the pile turn is the easiest. And if I do that backwards, then I'm just facing forwards ready to go. So hell yeah. So this is the shove it, and let's see what we do. We just we're just doing another 180. So the shove it's cool because it's one of these turns where, hey, I'm fairly vertical. So any turn where you're fairly vertical, and let's say this pile is here and I'm just on the seam of the pile and the shoulder, those are locations that aren't going to throw you. So if I am on that right side of the pile and the shoulder, I'm not going to get kicked up to the top of the pile, and I'm not really going to get kicked to the shoulder. So this vertical spin just kind of spins me in place. And because it does, what happens is when this bites, it also pushes the stern up against the pile. And so you get a wedge effect, and that's what effectively makes it so fast. This instantly drives down the shoulder of the wave. It's got that shoulder current, and this location is technically getting wedged and stopped, and at some point this will start to drive down. But you see the bow of the boat really is just now over there, and now this has an opportunity to drive down. And so with this, I definitely notice it's over rotated, and because it's over rotated, this portion, now we're way too high onto the pile, and now we're headed over here, and it's kind of set up. But here is where I would talk about the double pump. Is like anytime that you're starting a turn from a flat position or like a wide position where your boat's already like too lateral, it's gonna be a side surf. And then usually something kicks, like right there is the kick, and then you go to the top of the wave. That's not a bad thing, because usually you can then kick your way back in. So like right there, that was the opportunity to kick back in. But what happened here is I just didn't know my location, and I just think everything's good. And so I actually go towards the center of the boat, and this gets kicked too much. Instead of just waiting for it, high siding, no, it's going to kick. Just keep high siding, because it's going to kick. And when it does kick, cool. Hopefully it kicks less because I'm actually high siding. And then that gives me an opportunity to pump up to the top. And I think pump is a good word, because in R1 rafting, some waves, it's like you're just locked in at the bottom, and it's really hard to get yourself to jump up to the top of the pile. And so you might have to use a technique to do that. One is to like purl these tubes and potentially just be on the diagonal of them. So let's say the front got purled right here. I'm going to be on the other side, and then I'm going to be frozen. But at that point, like right here, like a lot of this is directly in line with me, and so that's really gonna kick me out. I try my best, but we get kicked out from there. All right, so hell yeah. So let's take a look at that second rotation. Here's the second rotation. It's a lot flatter. It's in the category of a double pump, and I haven't made a lot of videos on it, but just when you know you're not going to do a full rotation, the boat's going to at least pop up to the pile, and then you can actually rotate. And in that time, I get to almost counter rotate. Like here, the boat is trying to rotate another one, but it's kind of set up for this side surf, or what I would call a double pump, and so I'll have to figure this out, like what's better. But now look at this, the boat's counter rotating, and so that is something that I'll have to just look at more footage to be like, if that does happen, what's the best and what's the rhyme and reason for actually getting the boat to turn, because it does pop up to the top of the wave. It does make sense that this top of the wave is the stickiest, and I would just say doing a shoulder turn off the wave. Anytime that you're on top of the wave getting kicked out, if you can think of trying to paddle around the wave, don't try to paddle. If you think you're on the top, pretend that you're actually on the back of the wave, and it's going to be easier to roll around that pile than it is to go up and over. And so even just like right here, this portion of the boat gets stopped, and so it's going to be easier to do what I call a shoulder turn, where the boat turns towards the shoulder and then rotates back in. But even just like right there, that was we tried to throw in a paddle stroke, and I'm getting a lot better at like, hey, when the boat does this, figure out the timing and actually get that stroke in and make it effective. All right, hell yeah. So that was the full clip. Yeah, that's it. So hell yeah. So let's see if there's anything else I want to say. All right, so that's going to be that low-sided turn to a high side, setting up for a shove it. Second rotation, but the second rotation is subdued, and so it's going to be ready for a double pump. We do pump once, but we're not able to save it. When we do pump, the boat counter rotates, so we are rotating that way, it pumps up, and then we actually rotate that way, so we have to explore that dynamic. But what happens on the double pump is we think we're chill, and we actually get our body back to the center. Like we should be effectively high siding. From here to here, I'm moving my weight back to the center of the boat, and then that instantly bites. And it is cool, like once you are effectively high siding, you'll notice, sometimes it'll tack up and just kind of do small splashes, and then a second later it does like a big one. This one doesn't do it, you know what I mean? We're just kind of side surfing for a second and then just really grips. But I noticed on bigger holes, you'll get a little bit of a splash, like pop, pop, and then about a second later, it'll just really bite. And so that kind of gives you an opportunity to heavily high side. Even if you heavily high side, it's still going to bite. It's kind of just like anytime that you're hitting this, you're changing the subsurface, and you're changing like the potential energy of those locations, and so, yep. And anytime you're creating slower water, you're potentially creating a void. I would say this faster water is almost like, think of it this way. It's kind of like a skimming surface. If you went to a car wash and you had the water on full blast, you put your hand up against it, you know what I mean? It's gonna, like, you just barely graze it, and the water's gonna rush by. But if you interrupt that surface, now you have disrupted it, and now you could, get through it, so that's what I think happens when you're side surfing, when you feel like just a little bit of poof, and then it instantly bites hard. And so, all right, hell yeah, we're done with this one, but thanks for joining me. Hell yeah, give me a like or a comment, you know what I mean, whatever you think you want me to explore, because I'm just getting into putting terminology to this stuff. If that interests anyone, especially from a skateboard perspective, like I said, in a boat you have kind of double the positions, because you can be left and right. you know, it would be like in your normal skateboarding stance, you could have your toes towards one edge or your heels towards the other edge. All right, hell yeah. I guess we'll watch this one all the way through just to make sure I don't have anything else to say. All right, hell yeah. So we do a PRY turn. We jump to that low-sided tube that sets us up into kind of a side surf. We save ourselves and set up the shove it. The shove it does an over rotation. We talked about how we could stop that rotation. Hell yeah. And then after the, yeah, so hell yeah. So we got a PRY turn, jump on that other side. That stops the rotation. That's the take-home point, is like a lot of these turns will over-rotate themselves. So like right now, here's the over-rotated turn. We're trying to stop it, and hell yeah, let's take a look at that. So from the shove it, so here's the 180 shove it. It's over-rotated, subdued, halfway, bites, and then that's we're pieced out. All right, hell yeah. But yeah, I'm basically making these videos more for me. This is like a surf session. When I go, then I'm just kind of spot on, you know what I mean? Like jumping for these tubes. So actually I will spend a couple more times running through here. That's the only reason I'm making this video, is kind of for me, just because it doesn't get a lot of comments. So I can talk about that right now. No one cares, like unless you're doing loops, like even like skateboarding was uncool because it was like the yo-yo, you know what I mean? Cool, you can do these cool things, but you know, it definitely takes a movement of people to like want to do this stuff and make it cool. Like I'm definitely not making it cool, but I just want to show the physics of what you can do, especially since R1 definitely wants to, you know, kind of mimic what a kayaker does. All right, hell yeah. So we have a PRY turn, jump to that other side to stop the rotation. That's a low side to turn into a high side. Save it, go for the high side, set up a shove it. We're over rotated, try to do a second shove it. But kind of go into a side surf. That's what happens if a 180 doesn't go around, you side surf. But we actually low-sided too much and then bit. And then I should say none of the shove-its were shove-its because I didn't keep my body. I rotated with the boat, where a true skateboarding shove-it is where you do no body varial. All right, so hell yeah, low-sided turn, save it on the high side, go in for a shove-it. I should just keep my body facing the trough. We don't. Even for the second time, I'm just rotating my body around, but I can always, anytime that I feel like it's going to do a shove it, and even this isn't necessarily a shove it. Like what I'm categorizing as shove it, a true shove it, would be you are generating the momentum from the low side. And you could just say it's a low-sided shove it, but it works good if you are on the low-sided turn, your back foot shoves out just like a skateboard. Where if I was doing this from the other side, then my back foot, let's see, my left foot would be forward, my right foot would be back. Yeah, it still shoves out. If I was on that right side, my right foot would be forward, my left foot would be back, and I would be doing a front shove it. You know what I mean? So yeah, so this would be a traditional shove it on the low-sided tube. If you were on the other tube trying to do a shove it, well, I guess it would be a front side shove it, because your right foot's forward, your left foot is back, your toe is pointing towards where the camera is, and the back of the boat would be going towards your front foot. So that's rotating with your foot, and then you shove your front foot, your back foot. Your back foot shoves forward, and that motion, I just think of it as more difficult, and so that's what's considered a front side shove it. Also, if you were sitting over there with your right foot forward, left foot back, your toes would be facing the camera, and so the camera, like where this skateboarder would be looking, is the front side. And then so rotations, front side rotations are if you're facing sideways and then you rotate your body towards you know, the direction you're going, which is a clockwise rotation. And so the board does that clockwise rotation. So the board does the same rotation that your body would do in a front side. And so that's why that would be a front side shove it. And again, thank you for letting me make the, you know what I mean? I don't care. I don't need any thanks or anything, but hell yeah, I just feel good making these videos, especially because I don't have the opportunity to go boating every day. I don't have a river in my community. And so it's like at most a once a week thing, but I can use these sessions in the evening. Like even just this video was like, it felt like a full session, even though it was just one 30-second clip. And I can just kind of feel what I could do next time setting up these moves. All right, hell yeah. So one more look all the way through. Hell yeah. Oh, and then just even how we entered this. So this is going to be, you know, away from the wave. And so we're actually working on that because that right side is my offside. So what we're working on is paddling into the wave, away from the wave, which is difficult because this can really take the boat, you know, because that is the low-sided tube. And so when you enter a wave, when you're farther away from the pile, you don't have anything, you can't just bite up against the pile right away. And so what happens is the boat really has a tendency to just drive across and actually pick up that. So what I'm doing is heavily prying. So I'm getting some momentum in and then prying it just so when I'm in over the wave, then I can pry this back to straight. And you can see that dip of the tube, you know, as I'm surfing out. And this whole time I'm trying to get momentum this direction, but hold a pry so it doesn't flare out. Rotating this way, and it almost does, like right here it almost wants to rotate out, but now I'm effectively over that pile and prying, and so I can really heavily throw on the pry when that happens because I am over the pile, and that sets up that, and that really gets me over to the other side because we talked about how being on the low-sided tube and doing a traverse or a ferry across a wave on that low-sided tube, that really gets you to drive across. You do potentially get a little bit of tipping, and so that's what we see like right there, you know, this kind of tipping edge, especially when holding the pry. But that is a cool feeling in R1 because it feels like you can almost tip the boat over. It's a really dynamic you know, motion, and a lot of the things that I've been exploring lately is this low-sided tube, because even if you don't have a paddle in the river, you can effectively move the boat with that low side tube. This is just as good as taking a forward stroke. All right, hell yeah. And then so we get the pile, and then we're setting up for that pile turn. So the pile turn, jump to the other side, stop that rotation, side surf, jump to the pile, set up this shove it. We don't do a shove it. Over rotated, set up the second one, do a side surf, rotates the opposite way, and we're out. All right, sweet, we did it. Thanks for joining me. Booyah.